CosmicRadio.TV. Hello and welcome to the fine edition of my so-called 8-Bit Life. I'm your host, Roberto Villegas. Joining me today, my good friend, Jackie Hern.
Hey, Roberto.
How's it going? It's been good. It's been busy, but good. Yeah. Well, because it's we're at a point now where it's starting to get to the summer months and like really good. Like we're at a weird point in terms of like stuff happening. Like all the television's heading down the, done with the season. Like all your shows are wrapping up. Certain shows are spinning back up. We have movies coming out, everything else like that. But it's been weird because for me, like a lot of like the games are now coming out. And we're right now kind of in the gaming sector. My other kind of weird passion, video games, whatnot. We're slowly approaching. I think we're like a month away from E3, and I have no idea what the hell's going to go down. And usually by now we have like 8 different leaks that have told us what's going to happen beyond the usual Scorpio and stuff like that. But it's kind of bad as to how like where we're at right now with
so
that.
So is there nothing that you're excited about?
I mean, there's a couple things. It's such a weird thing because like honestly, I should probably preface everything, especially if you're new to the show and you've never watched my so-called 8-Bit Life before. I'm kind of an indie gamer. Like a lot of my major games that I play are independently developed. That doesn't mean that I don't like AAA games. It doesn't mean I don't like things like Fallout or Grand Theft Auto or anything like that. It's just those are all great games and I tend to enjoy them as well. But a lot of the things I get excited for are things in the indie space, specifically that. In fact, actually, I recently played a game that I'm kind of glad I didn't stream because I don't think I could have handled having my emotion like that on video. This game developed by I forgot it's Laura. I forgot how to pronounce her last name. She's actually French, Japanese, American, which was just probably the if there's an epitome of what America should be represented by, it should be someone that's French, whose one parent's French, one parent's Japanese, and she's American. Like that should be like the epitome of what America should stand for, as opposed to what's happening these days. But you might know her actually. Did you ever play the video game Plants vs. Zombies?
A little bit, yeah.
So she's the one.
A tiny bit, not. I mean, just enough to know, about it.
So Laura is the composer of that. She's the one that made the soundtrack for that game.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So if you like the music's for Rakuen is pretty much the same way. That's the game's name, and stuff like that. Man, it's funny because our chat room is completely. We have one member in the chat room, which is an awesome person, asking all sorts of weird questions about CBS television and stuff like that, which.
Do you work for CBS?
Look, he does. CBS is it's so funny. We're talking about CBS. I was actually talking about this with somebody recently, and it was speaking of CBS, I guess we should. I want to talk about this. I'm actually curious your opinion. Did you hear what happened with the whole Colbert? Is it Colbert? Colbert? What does he go by?
Colbert. Stephen Colbert?
Is Stephen Colbert's his official name, or it's not Colbert, right? Like it's not,
I don't know. My entire life, I followed him from the early Daily Show days, and it was Stephen Colbert.
Okay, then Colbert is how you pronounce it.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
You are aware he has a late night show on CBS.
Of course.
Okay, perfect. Because it's so funny. And for those who've not been keeping the news for some reason. So long story short, Stephen Colbert does late night television, and typically late night television I hate. Like I typically hate that format of I'm not sure what your opinion is on that format entirely, but I typically hate that format when it comes to like the whole. All right, we got to get the plug and all that kind of stuff. Like, I usually hate late night television like that. Or
okay.
I don't mind like Conan, but I usually can't stand if it's on broadcast because at least if it's on outside of broadcast, you can do some interesting things. Like Conan's done some very interesting concepts of shows in that late night format in terms of like, let's shoot a show from Mexico with an entirely Mexican crew. Let's do it in South Korea. Let's do And
the one thing that stands out to me the most about those late night shows is the best thing that you can get out of it is the fact that it gives some nice creative jobs to some good writers who are starting out.
Right.
Comedy writers that you'll see elsewhere. well, I mean, Conan O'Brien himself was a writer on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, he
back
was on
with Bob
SNL
Odenkirk.
and
Yeah.
Simpsons as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So it gives, and like, right now I know of some people that I don't know if there's anybody from the Birthday Boys, but a roommate of one of the Birthday Boys, at least, works for Jimmy Kimmel. And you can sometimes tell who, it's kind of neat to kind of learn a little bit about these comedy writers and then see the sketches and then and kind of tell who has been writing what, and so that, to me, that's the interesting point. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't like the fact that we've got to get Scarlett Johansson on and everything has to revolve around her.
Right.
And if you don't get her bid on and the full time for her, they're going to bump somebody else, or they're going to bump somebody's writing. And back in Johnny Carson day, it was bump a stand-up comedian,
According to the chat room, Conan O'Brien premiered on TBS in 2010. Man, I forgot all about that whole thing. I've actually was kind of looking back at the history of Conan. Just
wow.
That it's been that long, which is good. I'm glad. But going back, rewinding to that sort of point, let's flash forward to now and flash forward to CBS because, not to say anything about CBS, either good or bad. If you like this stuff, rock and roll. Like I said during the pre-show, I'm addicted to certain procedurals on the station, so good. But the ratings haven't been super hot, and more importantly, that the key demographic that they're trying to target hasn't been necessarily. They've been the joke has always been the older crowd watches CBS and like it's for your it's your daddy's television kind of crap, because really the only we could argue all day about how crappy fucking Big Bang Theory is, but we'll keep. I'll keep that. That's.
I don't watch it, but
I don't either. That's a. I am not quite ready to take.
I'm a good enough geek that I'm aware of it, and I know
it's okay. It's a piece of shit show.
But
it's a garbage show.
But that's it. I can't.
It is the basic.
It has a lot. Does it not have a laugh track?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
it's totally laugh track.
I don't.
No. I was talking with that about with. Speaking of television, I was talking with that.
No patience for
because
laugh tracks.
Recently, one of our mutual friends, Brant Hughes, has gone on and binged the entirety of Frasier on Netflix.
Oh my God.
He'd never watched Frasier before. He'd never watched. Yeah, this is again. All this is miraculous to me because I'm just like, there's a Frasier, but even more so, he wasn't aware of. He knew of Cheers, but he didn't know that was a history of Cheers going to Frasier.
Whoa.
So he was watching Frasier completely
Mind
without.
blown.
Yeah. I mean, he's a young kid. What can you expect?
I guess.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
But anyway,
but he's a smart guy. I mean,
right.
It's
okay.
He's hip. He's hip. To the whatever.
Yeah.
But maybe
But going back to the whole thing of all of that, and if we were to kind of extrapolate that, I asked him like, can you handle the laugh track anymore? He's like, I can handle it. And for the most part, I can. It's just new shows. I'm like, it's harder for me to watch a show with a laugh track for sure. It might be why I tend to watch procedurals on television because it's like there's no laugh track. But going back to the idea of it, specifically CBS, like I said, the ratings of that, in comes Stephen Colbert, and he had already been kind of slumping too. He had not been, in the late night show cycle. It's a very, very tough market because there's him, there's Jimmy Kimmel, there's what's that other guy? The NBC I think it's the NBC guy, but what's his name? Shit.
Seth Meyers?
There's Seth Meyers. There is, but there's he would sometimes have the guys from Dignation on.
Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon. Thank you.
Duh. Yeah.
It's okay. I could remember that.
That's funny that you knew enough to say to me he had Dignation on.
Because that's the only that's why I give Jimmy Fallon a complete pass because Jimmy Fallon at least
I thought that was the coolest fucking thing.
Because at least
Jimmy
I know
Fallon.
like he's had like he's had Reggie Fils-Aimé from Nintendo. He's had Miyamoto from Nintendo as well, and he's kind of done some weird things. So he's at least as best as he can working with what he can in that weird late night format. And stuff like that, doing as best as he can, which is great, and I commend him for that. But rewinding back to that, so. We had this recent election go down, in terms of everything happened, and whatever side you end up on, rock and roll. We'll just leave it at that. But one of the things a lot of people gave criticism to the other talk show hosts that had things like that had specifically Donald Trump on was that they never were critical of him. They never asked him any kind of critical questions or anything like that. They just sort of added, fluff piece. And the idea being, by doing so, you're kind of, risking, time to do that. And so the election goes down the way it goes down. And we flip back to the idea of Donald Trump kind of coming in. And then lo and behold, Stephen Colbert emerges as this like strange white horse. Like did you notice that over the course of late night that Stephen Colbert emerged as this sort of hypercritical, like almost harkening as close as he could to his old Colbert day, Colbert Report days.
Well, no. Okay, so now I'm confused. What do you mean? What was out of the ordinary about what Stephen Colbert has done?
Well, what's out of the ordinary is that he's actually. It almost feels like he whereas everyone kind of did fluff things, he actually did as much as he could. And D Jackson in the chat room, are you sure that Donald Trump is the president of the United States? I'm quite certain. He is the 45th president. History will have him as the 45th president no matter what happens. It will be recorded. It is part of the history books. It has happened. Unless this is timeless and you're able to take the mothership or the lifeboat out, if you have a DeLorean, if you have a TARDIS, whatever time machine you have, if you're able to correct said problem, cool. By the theory of time, though, we would probably split into two different paths. I'd still be in prime universe or secondary universe, depending on your point of view, and you'd probably be in prime universe or secondary universe from your point of view. But in either case, no matter what, the 45th president is, in fact, Donald Trump, and that has happened. Cool.
Right.
It's happened. It has happened. It
happened.
It happened. And that's it. That is what. Unless you are from, and if you are from another universe, that another timeline that has not had Donald Trump as the 45th president, you may want to promptly return to that timeline as best you can. I don't know how you necessarily recreate that because sometimes it's tricky jumping from universes and timelines, from what I understand. Usually when it comes to time travel, it gets a bit messy when you start futzing around with what happened, when it happened, how it happened, any of that kind of thing. Usually that becomes this murky concept of time and everything else, and I'm talking about time travel.
Oh, I mean, believe me, I lived through a lot of what actually happened during the election 2000 in such a major way that we could fill a whole nother story with.
We've filled many. But that being said,
but I mean but the fact is that regardless of what you think, the Supreme Court did give us a president, and it was George W. Bush.
Yeah.
So he was in fact our president. It's the same way now.
That's okay, and that's why I say it's it happens. It has happened.
And they accept
and no matter how things go down, no matter what goes down, the history books will record that he was the 45th president.
Absolutely.
That's just whether it be for 4 years, whether it be for the next 4 months, whether it be for 8 years, whatever it is, whatever happens, no matter what, the history books will record that Donald Trump was the 45th president.
Okay, let's.
But anyways, going back to all this stuff. Are you sure that former Governor Mike Pence is vice president of the United States? Yes, in fact, he is.
Okay, why are you doing this to me right now?
It's just. But regardless of all that, so coming back to all of this, it comes to CBS and it comes.
You're turning me to drink, Roberto.
If that's what's turning you to drink, you did just.
I was already turned.
You may want to go to the AA meetings ahead of schedule.
No, I was already
because we're not because it's not over. It's only May.
No, I know.
But going back to all this and rewinding it again, so everyone had him on, and somewhere along the line, Stephen Colbert, and this is either early on or later on and things like that, did the whole flip and started actually doing being critical, not just joking, not just being that. He actually brought back. Do you remember on Stephen Colbert the Word? Or where he would do the whole bit of a word would be there and he'd start joking and so the screen would be kind of like this sort of if we look at Visually Mind, you'd have his face somewhere here, and on the side it'd have whatever the word is. It could be bigly, it could be whatever the heck, but it'd have he would make a comment and the joke would be off to the side of said comment because of I'm not sure how much you watched the Colbert Report back in the day, but this is sort of a reoccurring theme that he would do, where he'd have him talking about a subject, being Colbert, and then the side of it would be the actual joke. It would be things like, poking fun of whatever it is he's talking about, and usually, in a very poignant way, fun way. So he brought that back, and it's been funny because all this has led up, all this sort of thing, because it's not uncommon for him to have all these things, because you'd only see like things like that on Conan and stuff like that on cable television, not on broadcast television. This is where we get up to the point of discussion. So recently, Stephen Colbert actually, I don't know. Did you hear about this, by the way? Him going a little too far on what he said of stuff. Let me see if I can find the thing he had said.
No, actually, I haven't, and I have been doing. I mean, Roberto, I've told you about my background in my real life and what I really do, and that's why I play with socks and googly eyes. Because I need to get the fuck away from it. And I can't stand it. So even with comedy, I can only take so much political comedy. And so I really haven't been keeping up with it.
So,
I'm a good citizen, and I check the news and I read it every day, but I don't want to hear any commentary.
So for a while, and I guess it's been dropped, but basically Stephen Colbert had said something along the lines of where... I guess he had said, so I wish I could find it, because he basically said something that I was like, oh damn, I can't believe he said that on broadcast television. I mean, in broadcast, for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, because television is such a weird thing of like, what do you mean broadcast television? Broadcast television is typically that stuff that you got over the antenna, or if you're a cord killer or cord cutter, you get over the antenna, or that it's your CBSs, your NBCs, your ABCs,
right.
your any of those sort of things doesn't count. Cable television doesn't count. Cable goes by
PBS, NBC, CBS, and ABC.
And there's certain rules and there's certain rules and regulations depending on what station you're on, what time of night you're on, and stuff like that. Yeah. And usually they're a little bit more strict when it comes to your
correct.
When it comes to your things, your broadcast stuff. So he says something, very critical. I think he says some along lines of the only place where you can. I want to find the exact quote, because it involves putting something in Vladimir Putin's mouth and Donald Trump, and I want to make sure I get the quote right, because it's an amazing it was an amazing quote when I read it, but for a while it was up there to be potentially investigated by the FCC, and when that article hit the internet, everyone's like, is Colbert gonna get canceled? And this is what was funny, was that like, I know you watch enough television, Jackie, that you understand the idea of ratings and whether something's doing good or whether something's doing bad or like that. But the greatest part about that was it occurred to me that if you have somebody like imagine this, if you have someone like a Colbert, right, who's funny on his own right, who's an amazing...
I found the quote. I found it.
Okay, read the quote out.
So the FCC is now investigating an insult-laden rant, to which Colbert said, "The only thing in your mouth is good for is being Vladimir Putin's cock holster." Yes,
and they censored that portion there, obviously, which is great. I was like, when I read that, I was like, oh damn, I didn't watch that live, but like that is a quote. That is amazing. And so they've since dropped said rule, I think.
Okay.
I think that they have. I don't know, but it was enough that the FCC had to go and potentially investigate. And the comment was that the FCC was fair speech, whatever. It's like, no, that could be considered obscene, and that's kind of the part of the rules of the FCC and all that stuff like that, and what they do and how they handle it. So all that was cool, but what I loved about it was that like everyone's like talking like, is he gonna get canceled? Is he gonna go off the air? I'm like, fuck no, are you kidding me? Like if you had a guy that is now attracting a crowd, we're talking about CBS, we talked about programming on there, from the daytime television is garbage, and like even the evening television is garbage, even to the point of like, I have no idea what this what the new Star Trek series is gonna do for CBS, because I don't even think it's going to last a season at the most, just because of the nature of CBS. Why the hell wouldn't you just eat the fine and say, fuck it? Because we now have this, like, you now have the show that you didn't think was going to be the show that is going to bring in the next, the next generation of audience. You know, like
Right.
because if you talk about the fact that like that audience that if we talk about CBS, typically we don't associate that with being edgy. Not in a bad way. We just don't associate it with being edgy. We don't associate a lot of broadcast television with being edgy.
I mean, even when David Letterman, he used to be the kind of edgy late night person.
Right.
And when he left NBC and went to CBS, it was almost like a watered down version of the late night show.
Right, and that's fine. And again, all audiences are different. All things are different. Everything else like that. But I started thinking about it and going like, man, that has got to be like just manna from heaven for them. Like just the idea of having now this highly this guy that's not afraid to say stuff, and he's had in previous episodes he's had people like Jon Stewart back on the air. He actually had the entire cast from the Daily Show back.
Daily Show, right?
Yeah,
right.
during the Jon Stewart era, where he had John Oliver, and again it's like this is becoming that kind of show, and I love the fact that kind of show is on broadcast TV, because that means people actually can watch it, and that more so that and it was so funny. It was so funny when I read that. I was like, they're not going to fire him. They're going to eat the fine and move on their merry way because their advertisers are probably eating this up.
Yeah, right. It just makes it more popular.
Yeah, and it was so funny. And the only reason I bring it up is because you're getting back into you and I are on the eve of getting it. So for those who have no idea, Jackie and I...
Nobody has an idea, so go ahead and explain it.
So Jackie and I actually do another podcast. It's not out. It's seasonal. It's weird that it's seasonal because it goes counterintuitive to everything that you've ever thought of things as seasons. We do actually show on the hit Netflix series House of Cards, starring what's his name? The actor's name?
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey playing Kevin Spacey as President Kevin Spacey.
That's true.
Because Kevin Spacey only plays Kevin Spacey.
And this is on the British Tech Network, by the way. Go check out the British Tech Network. They've got a lot of great shows.
Thing. But it's Kevin Spacey playing British Kevin Spacey. No, Kevin Spacey playing President Kevin Spacey as Kevin Spacey.
Right.
John Underwood somewhere. I love that that's what Kevin Spacey is now. That Kevin Spacey is nothing more than like the default villain.
Yeah.
Like to the point where if you watch any movie and Kevin Spacey,
spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Unusual Suspects, but
it doesn't matter.
I think this is a classic one.
Well, that's the original one, but like even now it's like,
who's Kaiser Sose? I don't know.
Even now, even with the idea of all of that, like it doesn't matter. Kevin Spacey is always the villain, and it's such a weird thing. Even if he's like, I'm not the villain, like you're the villain. My favorite one was because House of Cards had come out, and it had already come out and been sort of new. Was the fact that I think at that time there was a one of the Modern Warfares or one of the Call of Duties, I can't even remember which franchise it was, where he was basically the CEO of some company, and it's like, oh, he's the bad guy at the end. Who knew? It was like even to the point of the joke. There was a video on it on one of the Rooster Teeth channels, and they had blurred out basically Kevin Spacey's face as a gag, like because they didn't want to be spoilery. And I think even like Joel was like, who doesn't know that that's the case? Who isn't aware that Kevin Spacey is the villain? Because that's what Kevin Spacey does. Like that's all that Kevin Spacey can do. Not in a bad way. He's a great actor, and you always need a decent. But anytime, even if it's like supposed to be the twist, it's like, oh, he's a bad guy. It's like, he's Kevin Spacey. Of course he's the bad guy. Of course he is. He's gonna be the villain.
It's Kaiser Sose.
Exactly. But so going back to all that, and going specifically back to House of Cards, so we do a show that one. We talk about the show, we talk about episode per episode, and go like that. And for the longest time, and this we could talk about this here because this is not the show. You and I were kind of getting bored of the series.
Yeah.
What was your at what point did it start getting because you were the one that was gung ho about that whole thing. Like you wanted to do the podcast, not in a bad way, but this is like your.
No, I know. Like I begged you, I begged and pleaded you because I knew, like I met you through Diamond Club, and I knew like of your podcasting skills, and I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to do it, and I thought having you as my sort of mentor through that process would be a good thing for me, and it was. I cannot quite remember what it was that I initially really loved about it.
I mean, because it's a cool show, and I think it's what's hard because
so that was what 2014 when we
it was 2014 is when it started. Okay.
Yeah, February 2014, around that time, or maybe March. That's when you and I and Charlotte Henry.
Yep.
Hopefully we get her back sometime. She was great.
She's got a full docket with Theresa May and
she doesn't have
Brexit
time for it.
and the flash election.
Right.
She's got a full document just dealing with everything that's happening in her country of origin. She's dealing with her own house of cards right now.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, France basically showed how much that house of cards is going to fall in a very horrible way. Because that French election went the way that we'd all hoped and dreamed it went, and now they're talking about actually reforming things, and the UK is not part of that discussion anymore.
It's pretty crazy.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
Both silly and amazing, but it's
a crazy goddamn world we live in between when we first started that podcast and today. And so I think because the show, because I feel like I know that the show is coming to a conclusion. And I think I've publicly said, I think I said on Court Killers did a special on shows that they had watched. If you don't know about that, go to courtkillers.com and check that show out. But they do some spoilering on shows, and they were kind of shocked to hear my comment that if this is not the last season of House of Cards, I will give up. And even though I have a podcast on it, like I just felt that way, like the show needs to resolve. But I honestly believe that it's heading that point. I think you were saying this either in our pre-show at the front of this episode, that you can definitely sense that it
feels
coming
like a
to
crescendo. It feels from the trailer that it's a crescendo as opposed to a building block, which is great because ultimately, the show has kind of gone in some weird directions in that we now have a new showrunner, which is what usually.
That's right.
Usually that's a signal for me of saying, okay, they have a new guy doing this. Maybe this is, because usually that's the case. Like when you would tell me that, I was like, oh crap, they're going to go on for another 3 freaking seasons because they got a new showrunner and then wants to prove his worth. Which is okay, I guess. That's what rock and roll. I don't know how you do it. But then the trailer came out. I'm like, okay, maybe they're moving towards the end of some sort of ending. I don't know what ending, but some sort of ending. And I honestly, I think felt like for me, it might have been, I don't even know what season it was. It would have to have been, let's see.
I have to go back and even check what season we're on right now.
It would have to have been, I'll tell you, the moment.
So we're in season 4 or 5. Right
okay,
now.
It would have been either season 3 or 4 that I started to have the drop off. Because, and we're not going to spoil it here, so I'm going to be very cagey about how I say things.
Good.
But after the conclusion of Zoe's story,
yes,
and Zoe did what Zoe did.
Yes.
And then after a lot of those conclusions happened, that's when I started dropping off. When that, because ultimately, I mean, basically what happened was, and I think this is what became my problem with the show, is we started basically getting, how do I best put it? We started getting to the point where it became less and less about how villainous Frank can be.
Right.
And more deep within the political spectrum of politics. And that's
so Roberto, here's the question for you about it, without getting into spoilers or anything, is that I think that there is actually a renewed interest in House of Cards, which I didn't think there would be after the election in the United States and the fallout from all of that and the way people have been responding. I think maybe there's just been enough time. We've passed the 100 days of the new president. I think that there is a lot of renewed interest because of how almost sort of chaotic Not, I mean, whether you agree with the president or not, things are pretty chaotic in our political world.
Yeah.
Do you think that that has anything to do with this added sort of interest with, like, because we know that House of Cards moved back. Normally they start in February or March, and now we're at the end of May or June when the show's going to start. So that they must have made some updates.
Yeah,
what are your
I almost want to say that I think the renewed interest in House of Cards, and I think it is because we're coming to the point now where we're starting to hit I guess, because I don't know if it was just the election, if it's just in that, then there wouldn't be the interest. That would be this. You can make the gag or joke that Frank Underwood is basically our current president and stuff like that, and that joke only can last so long and can only fuel a show for so long.
Exactly.
And really, honestly, our current president is not Frank Underwood. Frank Underwood is far more talented. I'm just kidding, but anyways,
it's really bizarre.
But
yes.
regardless of that, that could only fuel a show for so long, and if you're going to pull from the pages, that is not how you make a very, very compelling drama. You can't just keep pulling from the pages of history of popular culture. Even something like Mr. Robot, which was a great drama, is a great drama. They didn't do anything. They've done recent tech stuff and recent tech hacks, but nothing as egregious as sort of what's happened in that. But the point being, it had a drama base, and built from said base and did a thing. And I think House of Cards has done that too. I think the renewed interest is because, when you watch that trailer, it feels like this is the end.
Yeah.
In a good way. They haven't said it yet. And I think that they're trying to hold back on saying it because they don't want to screw it right now. Like, they may have like another season planned and stuff like that, or they may be testing it out to whatever. But I think this is. I hope that if this isn't it, that it ends in the next season. Because again, there's only so much you can do with that show.
Absolutely.
And that was always a thing, was that there's always this time limit on that show. Because you and I talked about
just as there was with the original UK show.
Yeah,
but there was definitely a time limit on that.
Just the idea of having a present. Like you only have X amount of years to do so. You only have X amount of things or whatever.
Unless you become king.
Right. Exactly. And the point being, there's only so much you could do, and at that point, and two, we're starting to see Netflix go. We're coming to the era that I've looked forward to in internet television. That the line between broadcast and cable, the line between cable and internet television is blurring very, very crazily. In that you have people talking about things like The Handmaid's Tale. You have people talking about
I love
House
that.
of Cards.
Do you watch it?
I have not watched it. I need to watch it. Now that I realize it's dystopia, I'm kind of more intrigued.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
You have people talking about other things on Amazon coming out, this certain stuff. We're not at a point where basically an internet television show about a transgender character won an Emmy. One of the highest awards for what we would consider television, which is great and awesome. That we're coming to the point where like that line is blurring, if not completely being shattered. And we're at a point where recently it came out was Bill Nye Saves the World, sort of his sort of adult version of a science show. I'm not sure if you've watched it on Netflix at all, but watching it, I watch it and go like, man, this feels like it was pitched to television, but they just didn't buy it, or Discovery, and just, Netflix took a bite because it's like, well, forget it. Like, we're at a point now where I'm going in my head saying, oh, I guess they pitched that to television, they didn't buy it, so they ended up pitching to Netflix, and Netflix is a viable platform to pitch a second show. Like, it's come to the point where you can talk about the idea of saying in very tones. Because if you talk about the idea of like, oh, I'm making, if we went back, let's say 5 years ago, and 5 years isn't that whole isn't a long point of time. Like, how long ago was Breaking Bad, to talk about television? Because
Right. I just realized today that season 3 was in 2010. So that's 2008, 2009 Breaking Bad started?
Right. So about 5 years ago.
So crazy.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit, no, actually like 6 years ago. But
almost 9 years ago.
Almost 9. Yeah.
It was 10 years. Actually, it was 10 years ago this year that they first shot the first scene, because I was listening to the Better Call Saul Insider podcast, and they talked about Bryan Cranston's 50th birthday was one of the first days that they shot, and now he's at 60.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's been about 10 years. There you go. So the point I'm trying to make is, like, if we flash back to then, we were talking about how cable was the sort of resurgence. And now, again, we're at a point where with internet television that
Right.
pitching something to Netflix is just as viable as anything else, or pitching it to Hulu, or pitching it to
Amazon Prime,
to whoever.
Yeah.
And that's, we're at a point now, heck, we're at a point where movies that you could watch online got theatrical releases just so they could potentially be considered for an Oscar, because that's like the rules of it. Like, we're at that point in content, and that's awesome and that's amazing. And I think because of that, it's weird to be, I think that's why we're seeing this resurgence in that, because we're now at a point where it's no longer the idea like, oh, it's an internet show. It's television. And we're not even talking about whether or not House of Cards isn't TV anymore. And I think that's part of it, is that
TV. What's TV?
Well, no, I think it's part of it is that we're at a point where like a good majority of stuff on Netflix is original now. Like, there is stuff that's not original, but for the most part, you see them completely, plugging their original content, and in places you didn't think they plug original content. Like in other words, you'll see Facebook ads come up, and that's what to be honest, that's how I found out about House of Cards.
Really?
New season. Because I do not keep up with a lot of the stuff, and I kind of I only slightly venture out in my bubble in terms of television, just because I watch a lot of internet like Rashid content and YouTube stuff like that, and somehow because I'm paying for all these services without ads, I don't see any of the advertisements anymore, which is great and amazing and glorious. But because of that, I missed the idea of like, well, what's happening? What's this? And somehow I went there on YouTube and I saw like all these upside down, flags. I go, what the hell's going on? Oh, new House of Cards season. And then a trailer happened, and I watched it, and I was like, oh, okay, this looks cool. Like, this was the first time I'd watched a trailer for House of Cards and said, wow, that looks cool. Mm-hmm. That looks like it could be something.
I'm relieved that you feel that way, because I've been saying, if you follow me on Twitter and or even know who the hell I am, I've been trying really hard to. I just realized I'm not a good podcaster. And I accept that. And, I know what my passion is, and my passion is animating and doing cartoons and other stuff that I really want. And I actually have a really good opportunity to make something happen. And if I don't fucking, pull my boots up and fucking make it happen,
sure.
It won't. However, this is one show I'm actually excited to talk about again.
Yeah.
And it reminds me as to why I really started doing any podcasting, which is I enjoy talking to you about the show.
I guess
enjoy talking to Rick Foster about Lawyer Better Call Saul, or those other shows. That's what I'm there for.
I'll be guesting on your show pretty
yes,
soon.
You will.
Tomorrow
maybe.
Tomorrow you watch it live, and
we were going to do it today, but we're going to do it tomorrow.
But either case, because of that, it's. I didn't even realize like Gus came back in Better Call Saul. Like, I didn't realize there was this like.
No, you did not.
Like, I've been out.
You're out of it. As far as
for the and I didn't realize half the stuff. Like, okay, let me fucking go back and watch his stuff. Like, holy crap, Gus is back. Oh my god, they're actually doing more things. Because the pitch for Better Call Saul was, let's make it a comedy. Let's be kind of funny with it, because it was going
to be a half-hour comedy, and that sounds terrifying.
Which and I go, okay, cool, and that intrigued me, because I don't know if I could go through another Breaking Bad, but we are going through another Breaking Bad.
That actually kind of brings us full circle to the start of our conversation about laugh tracks, because I was going to say to you that I have no patience for laugh tracks, but I find a lot of comedy in Better Call Saul. Or even House of Cards, there's a little bit of comedy. You don't need a goddamn laugh track to reinforce it to you.
No,
but it's there. Like those are the kinds of shows that I like. I like these dark shows that talk about or expose somebody who is just like on the cusp of becoming something terrible, but there's something trying to keep them from Breaking Bad. But yet, but then there's comedy behind it.
For sure. Again, I'm excited for a lot of the televisions coming out, and I think it's because I recently signed up to PlayStation View, and I've been watching a lot of actual television, and just like realizing how much of it's just utter garbage. In that it becomes just background noise. I'm like, man, I
Yeah.
maybe this is why I don't watch a whole lot of new shows and stuff like that, just because a lot of it is silly and dumb and everything else. But yeah, it's weird in that.
Sorry, I kind of took you off track there about
No. It's very
because
much
you were saying Better Call Saul would be a comedy, but because that was their original thought. But I think
right.
that they did it right. They're going to throw in, So I think, I think just in general, television and entertainment, that as we know it, all of these worlds like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu is just making. It's just making better. It's forcing writers and creators and the producers to actually make good stuff,
Yeah.
and a little bit more intelligent.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's strange, and I'm definitely kind of coming back into the whole thing, and it's cool to know that there is some television, because like for the longest time, like the only show I was really caring for on Netflix was things like freaking fuck, what was that show? BoJack Horseman. I like that.
Oh
Kind
yeah,
of, like
okay.
was that. And now because it came to the point of like, well, let me see what this Bill Nye show is about. Well, it's not my thing. And it became like, well, what's this White Rabbit Project? Not my thing. And then like BoJack, like, oh, this is my thing. And now just seeing House of Cards and the way that they seem to be going with it, at least the trailer makes me think of this. It feels like we're hitting a crescendo. Again, I don't know. I don't have an idea. I hope it is, just for the sake of that show. But to me, that might mean, and that might be a good thing, because this might be actually a good way of, we talk about the idea of programs. We talk about the idea of Netflix becoming a legitimate platform to pitch things and discuss things and talk about things. That if you have a showrunner that comes into an established show and he's the one that ends it, and he does a good job and gets people interested in the show, again, so to speak, that to me seems like the idea of saying, oh, cool. They may approach him and say, well, what else you got? And he says, well, I have this idea for blah, or, I've always wanted to do an adaptation of X, or even more so, they could say, we have the rights to these properties. Is there anything you can work with here? And say like, yeah, I could easily make a show in blank or blah or that. And even more so, if you have a guy like this who's taking an established property, I don't know the new showrunner is, as I keep saying, guy or that.
Yeah, I wish I knew the name. I do,
okay.
but I do have a comment about Bo Williams, who was the previous one, and his sort of run-ins with Trump lately. He's been very vocal about Trump. So. Yeah, but maybe we should save that for the House of Cards show.
No, but either way, because of that, and because you have a showrunner that's sort of new and exciting and stuff like that, I think that having that and having a guy like that there, that to me leads in the idea like maybe they're going to figure out a way to just sort of end this show, but utilize this talented guy that is able to take an existing property and work within it and work within its bounds and make it exciting, make it different, either end it or whatever. That maybe that's the game plan. Because I always think of like when you do showrunner, they want to keep being paid and they want to keep making money even if there's only like a few seasons left, kind of thing. And to me, if they go that they could theoretically end this show, but work with this guy again, and that might be their play, because again, it feels like that trailer feels like we're coming to a close. We're coming to something. We're coming to some type of conclusion, whether it be even if it's the election and things go down, our villain has to fall. And yes, we're following the villain story, but our villain has to fall. Every villain falls, even if we understand how they fall. Even in Breaking Bad, there's the scene at the end. I think the last episode where what's his face?
Walter
White says I kept saying it was for the cancer and all that stuff. I did it for me, and that
right. I love that. I love that so much.
Great scene, great role, but
but
again,
Skylar says, "Don't you dare try to tell me one more time that this had to do with you did this for the family.
I did it for me.
I did it for me."
And it's like, that's a villain. That's what a villain does. We
Mhm.
saw the fall of a good man that became bad, because that's a good villain. A good villain that we can see the pathos, and we could see stuff. We see where they made the tragic mistake, because that's what a villain's supposed to do for the most part, is make a tragic mistake. And so we've seen all those things when it comes to Frank. And now we're at a point where you see the trailer where he's talking about Underwood, 20, the next year. And then you realize, wait, he keeps going beyond 8 years. Oh, he wants his wife to run. He wants it to go on forever. He's not just making, he wants a dynasty. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted, because the comment I'd always been making, like, once he's at the top, I don't know what happens to the world. And like, now I know it's just Frank can be Frank. And like, that to me interests me. That seems compelling. That seems cool. Whereas everything else seemed like garbage and crap and stupid. So
Totally agree.
So that is that. That is how it all goes down, and everything else like that. All right, we have casted for long enough. Jackie Hern, thank you so much for being on this episode of the podcast, because I'll be on yours and you have stuff to plug and you have animations and puppets and all kinds of weird, crazy things. Where can people look back on your stuff and enjoy it?
If I were to point out anything right now, it's just please go check out my YouTube. And if you follow me or subscribe to my YouTube, I will become your very best friend, and I will make a sock puppet that will come to your house and make you breakfast. But
now when you say subscribers, because there's now actually I guess it's called, because there are twos now. Never mind. You mean like subscriber, like the free one, not subscriber as the I pay you like for the lifetime.
No.
Okay.
I haven't charged anybody for anything yet. I do have a Patreon, but that's aside the point. Honestly, if you're a friend of mine who's doing creative stuff and you have a Patreon, if you send me $1, I'll send that $1 right back to you. No, because honestly, like at this day and age with Patreon, like that's really what it's become, is sort of a networking thing until you reach a certain level where you explode and you can actually make a living from.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but yeah, just go to youtube.com/Jackie Hern and give me a little subscribe. Give me a little, hey, howdy ho. Yeah.
Like and subscribe. Of course, you can find me. I'm at Vincent404. There in the chat rooms. If you want to catch previous of the podcast, you can go to our website, CosmicRadio.TV /8BitLife. There you'll find links to show notes, our Twitter account for the podcast, which is at 8BitLife Podcast. Of course, if you're watching live, thank you so much. And if you do not watch it live, you got to do make sure to go to twitch.tv /CosmicRadio.TV. Hit that big old follow button, and you'll get notified whenever the thing goes live. I'm actually working on some other stuff to go on beyond just simply 8BitLife. I'm sort of brainstorming ideas to do more talk content, maybe some more gaming content as well, kind of figuring out where the good sort of series can be, what I can kind of tackle and utilize and do. And of course, hit me up on Twitter at Vincent404. And after you've supported all the other Patreons, if you have like $1.50 left over, head over to patreon.com /8BitLife and help the show become bigger, better, and more awesomer. So that is it for today. Let's tune next time. Talk to another geek about something completely and utterly random. Bye, people.
Bye.